Welcome. This is Scene Shift, the podcast. Today we welcome David Zinn, 3-time Tony Award-winning set and costume designer.
We are thrilled to be meeting David for the first time, and it's surprising as we have followed his career and admired his work for many years. Our conversation was rewarding. We discovered that David treats design collaborations as a football player takes the ball and runs with it.
Listen to the episode to help us decide which position he plays. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm Maureen Weiss. I'm a performance designer.
I'm Sybil Wickersheimer. I am a set designer.
And I had the pleasure of working with Sybil on the book, Scene Shift. This book is about conversations between theatrical designers, specifically scene design.
We have been really interested in continuing our conversations with set designers, discussing where they are now, where they want to go, and what they bring to the practice of set design. We want to continue that practice of talking to each other because it is such a solitary art form. This podcast grew out of that continued interest in conversation and the support of our creative producer, Taya Chura.
Please join us today.
Hello, Scene Shift fans. Today we have David Zinn with us. David fell in love with theater in high school and then studied design at NYU before launching his career. David, I've seen your work from Los Angeles to Chicago to New York in Stereophonic, An Enemy of the People, Kimberly Akimbo, The Minutes, which I actually saw at Steppenwolf in Chicago before it went to New York, Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo at the Kirk Douglas here in Los Angeles, The Sound and the Fury, also here in Los Angeles at Red Cat, and August Osage County. Thank you so much for being our favorite Scene Shift supporter. From the moment Scene Shift U.S. Set Designers in Conversation came out, you have been a big fan, and we appreciate that.
First of all, it's an honor to be in your company. That book is extraordinary, and really happy that you put it together. Happy to give those women a platform, and also not to silver lining, the pandemic, because it's impossible to silver lining so much of it. But one of the things that I think was resonant for a lot of people was just the ability to meet, because we never get to do that and build, conversation. I feel like there's so many different versions of what you're doing, which is wouldn't it be nice if we all just actually met and started to talk together? And it's a rich community, and I think there's a reason that many directors are like, oh yeah, designers are kind of my favorite. We're an interesting connection box to kind of all the things and all the fields, and it's really wonderful to be in community with other designers. So it's a long way of saying thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've spent the past couple days just listening to some interviews you've done and some speaking you've done. And I was having moments of just such nice open agreement that I don't get to have when I'm isolated in a room with my own process. I was just so grateful that you're saying things out loud. And that's what happened with the book, is it's we isolate ourselves and we think we're in this process and we're trying to catch up to somebody else's process. But we actually share a lot of the exact same process that we don't know how we osmosis it in. You speak so well about that. I'm glad to open that up. We are both teachers to our students also.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a teacher per se, and mostly that's just an institutional.
Yes, yes, and yes.
I don't do super great with interfacing with a sort of lot of red tape. Although I admire everybody that has the wherewithal to do that, because you're doing it on behalf of making a community with younger artists, and that is important. So I've tried to find other ways to do that, but yeah, teaching is a beautiful art that I feel like I shouldn't be left for somebody else.
I walk out of many meetings in tears. So you're a smart man.
Yeah. It's just not for me. It's not where my brain is.
Especially right now, the institutions are getting just slammed, and their approaches are so different. When I feel angry, I go back and I think I'm here because I'm teaching my students. So I just sort of focus on, okay, what is the class content today? Because I can make that as good as it can be. And that is sort of my revolt against the administration,
Yeah. I mean, that seems like a sort of micro version where we are as a country at this moment, which is just how can I take care of the things that keep getting thrown at me from above is so insane. It forces us to kind of speak their language in order to have that conversation. And I'm just like, it's not a language I want to speak, actually. So more and more, I'm taking that language out of my mouth, and I'm focusing on the things that I care about and the communities that I care about and the art making that I care about. And more things, I'm shutting down anything that's sort of outside of that immediate thing as much as possible, because it's Caliban, right? I guess Caliban figured out how to kind of how to turn it, but it is like the danger of all this, the particular kind of oligarchy that's happening right now is like, it forces you to speak by their terms. In the kind of last 40 years of this like corporate takeover of speech, really, it's not good. It's not good. It's not human. It's not good, and it doesn't serve anybody. Not like businesses are flourishing that. You know what I mean? It's like, doesn't serve anybody. It just alienates everybody, which is its purpose, and to kind of wrap people up in language in a really destructive way. And so anything that forces me to do that, I just don't do very well with that. So I try to focus on the things that are, the yummy kernels inside.
One of the things I was listening to that you said that I resonated with, which is when you read a script, right? Like the first read of a script, and I'm not going to phrase it as you did, but that you're not able to read in the way that like there's this detail, but it sort of flows into you and you're pulling things out of it. And that's exactly how I feel when I'm reading a script the first time. The language doesn't feel like the word itself. I have to sort of allow it to wash over me. And I apply that right now to how everything is doing, like all the language that they're trying to police. Mm-hmm. Like I have to reframe that all the time to actually, how is it washing over me? Like I have that skill. And so just hearing you say that, that's how I sort of confront a theater piece in general. I always thought it was a detriment because I was like, I'm sort of doing this general thing with this script. But I really liked hearing that it sounds exactly like I'm reading when you spoke it. So there's like a flow to this.
I'm happy to hear that. I felt like I finally ultimately had to come clean about something that what did give me kind of shame, because so many people that I know, so many directors I know are so literate and able in a really, I don't mean this in a bad way, kind of academic way, like really look at a piece of literature. And at a certain point I was just like, my brain can't function like that, doesn't function like that, and can't function like that. And that is not unfrustrating. And sometimes it is a deficit, but also there's kind of beauty in it too. And I've tried to kind of lean it.
David, have you ever started reading a play and stopped within the first scene and just, you knew what the set was and you just start sketching?
Yes.
I thought you were going to say it stopped and we're like, nope.
I find myself sometimes being compelled to design it, like even before I finished, the first act sometime. And then I go back.
Yeah, it's inevitable, isn't it? That you can't go too far until your brain starts to organize the things that you're reading into some kind of structure. And it's always exciting a little bit to do that on that first read, because you know that the structure is going to get smacked. Like it's so unless the thing is like, I take place in this location, like the entire play takes place in that location. Like you know that something, I guess even in that context, something's going to come to kind of smash it up. So it's sort of exciting to be like, who am I gonna, like, I think I have this thing, like, what's gonna fuck it up, or what's gonna ruin my good plans, It's just how we look at the world, right? Which is like how to contain the kind of poetry that you're encountering and what to bounce it against,
And reframing that moment when you're like, oh shit, I lost the line of it, to it's a smashing moment is really good for me, because sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I just lost it. But instead to think, no, this thing that I want, I can be as stubborn as I am about and figure out a way to make that smash into the thing.
Look, there's a point at which I don't love, like I've set up a system, like don't like the system to get smashed, of course. But I mean, my friend Avram Frankstein kind of calls me punk rock, which I don't really think I am, but I feel like I identify with the spirit. I do like neat systems to get destroyed. And I also like not being in control necessarily of the things that do that. So I really do try to find a place in the work for chance or for accident I like to kind of build that in structurally. So there are things that I'm not finishing until like all the things are assembled. I'm afraid of, but I welcome the big, like, jab from where I wasn't imagining it was going to come, if that makes sense.
Do you find that there's like a repeated place that sort of comes from, like, oh, the painting of the floor, or is it always just a surprise?
Always
area.
different. Yeah, I just
Okay.
think the circumstances are always different, and I'm always leaving something out. And we're, I think, by nature responsible people because we have to kind of keep so many things operating in order to get to the finish line. So it's just like once you sort of suss the machine and how it operates, it's like, what can I hold back? It isn't going to screw us all up, but what can I hold back to be able to keep some sort of chance or surprise alive in the process,
I like that it hold back rather than cut, I find that I end up going into the design more when I feel release about cutting something. Like, I thought that was so important, but actually, once we start talking about real priorities, which often is, surrounding the budget conversation, but I feel like this breath of air as I cut things. But I like that holding back term is a really nice way to think about it instead of cutting, which seems a little violent, although I'm channeling Anne Bogart's comment about, making a choice is a violent choice, right? And I love that term because you have to be bold to make a choice and cut something, right? But holding back is a different set of cards if you just reframe it with that language.
I love making decisions, actually, right? Our job is just about picking stuff and making decisions all the time. And I'm good at it, and I like it. And I am, I think, a reasonably responsible person about trying to answer enough questions that the machine can function. But I'm going to try to use a metaphor that is going to fall apart because it's sports related and I don't really know anything about it. But I'm imagining when I'm talking, what I'm imagining is like I'm holding the football and like, all the like this guy is coming and this guy's coming and I'm like going to the end zone, where it is like, so it's not combative, but it is like there are a lot of decisions I can make, and then there are a lot of decisions that everybody's going to want me to make, but I'm not going to make until I'm ready to make them. That's what I try to hold space for, and that's why it's hard to predict, which is like, I don't know. Like sometimes like what the floor is easy. I know what the floor is, like, great. But there are things that I don't know. Or I understand that the director doesn't know yet or wants some time with the actors to like figure that out. So how do you not only preserve your own space to make decisions, but how do you, sometimes I'm ready to make the decision,
Right.
but I see that they're not. And so I need to also try to preserve that time, but also keeping, on this side, keeping management and shops and stuff busy enough so that they are set up knowing that something might change and that we are able to turn it around quickly enough to be able to respond to the, to what people need and what develops in the room.
How do you do that? Like, so, I mean, I'm fairly well known for being the I don't know, I'm not sure answer, but it is like being a football player at times. So would love to hear some football tactics that you have to make it to that end zone.
Yeah, a good mouth guard, a helmet, the weird black stuff in your eyes.
You're about to make my 11-year-old son extremely happy with this podcast. He will understand set design at a whole nother level now.
But who am I in that thing? Am I the quarterback? Like, I actually don't know who the person is who carries that ball. Maybe it's different people.
You might be the coach.
Yeah. How do I do that? I think of design. I'm the Sondheim musical. The last Sondheim musical that I did at the Shed about a year and a half ago is now in rehearsal. We're doing it at the National Theatre in England, and which is fun. It's fun to have another crack at it, and it's largely recast, and it's cool. It's like a fun opportunity, and there's a lovely design. I have like a design assistant who's a kind of staff position for a year, and he's a wonderful young designer, smart and interesting. I had a bunch of fittings last week, and I was talking to him about the sort of like about the kind of performative nature of what we do, which I find, I started as an actor when I was a kid and then in high school. And though I sort of knew I didn't want to do that anymore, I kind of come by that gene naturally, but it's really tiring for me. Like a day of fittings really just wipes me out. I love them. Like it's not because I'm having a bad time. It's just like, I'm not a person who likes to be on a lot. And so having to be, that the kind of performance of our job, which really has a performative aspect, is hard. And the reason I'm talking about it is because I think that, for me, a little bit of the way that you buy some goodwill and buy people's patience to hold off on decisions that they really want to be making really sooner than you wish is like, it's like part of the full performance of your job, which is to like get people excited about the thing, like understand to keep enough good decisions happening so that people aren't like, you're a person who doesn't make decisions, I'm going to punish you, which is so effing stupid, but is, it's like, that's the balance, right? So all of my processes, especially as I interact with the staff and stuff like that, is it's not a performance in that I'm lying, but it's a performance in that as kind of any leadership position is, right? Which is a performance that you're trying to kind of foster people's goodwill and flexibility when you know that they ultimately kind of don't, not that they don't want to have goodwill, but the flexibility is stressful for them. And so they want to solve the issues. And so, keeping everybody like jazzed about what's coming is like, I think is kind of part of our job, or it's how I approach what we do. And because I know that there are times when I'm really going to push people's patience and I'm going to really frustrate people. And I'm also like a 55-year-old white guy. Do you know what I mean? So like I get a pass that a lot of people don't get a pass. So I try to use that power for good. Do you know what I mean? I try to use that power for the advancement of the piece as opposed to for my own advancement. But yeah, I kind of harness all of that. It's like a charm offensive. Like, how do I bring enough good energy to this piece and to these shops? Want to kind of keep the energy up so that people want to go with you on the ride.
Right. Because I think that it's helpful for me because I can remind myself that flexibility is not easy for the team at all times, but also to keep the energy up, because I say that like at a certain point I do flag. Like I'm just like, done. Don't ask me anymore. Like I have to steel myself from this. But I think it will help to know that like the performance part of it is I'm keeping the team up because I want this idea to get through, right? Instead of me feeling like I need to pound it through.
Yeah, and I'm also banking energy for myself later because there is going to be the time where I'm just like I'm so done with everything. I'm going to rely on the time, like 2 weeks ago when I was in a better spot about all of it. I'm going to rely on that energy to help us all kind of come to this with a sort of positive attitude.
It's important to be able to say for the team to know when you mean business so that you can play against your fun self and your encouraging self. And I think that you're talking about, storing up that goodwill of, yes, we like you, so we're going to do that for you. We know this is a challenge. And I recognize often that we're asking quite a lot of everybody that we work with. Because I'm not a costume designer, I think of myself more of, if I have any background that's helpful, would be as a lighting designer, and I've often wanted to design lights, but I don't have the technical language anymore because when I designed lights, there were not LED lights. And, so I have a lot of questions for you about how, when you are a costume designer or a set designer, how do you not step on toes of the other design team? How do you collaborate, knowing that that job also equally as well? So, and I think it goes back to my knowledge of your work, but then also my knowledge of you. And so yesterday when I saw Luis Alfaro, he said, "Oh, that's so fun that you're doing, a podcast and that David is a guest. He's a very fun person to have in the room." And I thought, well, that's interesting because I'm not a fun person. I think I'm really, no, I mean, I used to be fun. I think I used to be fun, but I have, my fun is when I get to break something apart or like take action, like activism. I love that, and I like to inspire people to take their little actions and like roll with them. So that to me is fun. But I think the questions I have, so I've seen a number of your shows, and I realize they range from your costume design work to your set design work, right? And so how do you think of yourself as you move through? Do you have to change your thinking as you enter a team as a different designer? Does that make sense? Or do they get the benefit of your interest in the whole production so you can put forth ideas? So for example, Enemy of the People, which I was crying and getting goosebumps at the same time. And I think it was because of the bar. I mean, I thought the whole thing was beautiful, and then the bar descended. And maybe then it was the schnapps. But then the ice, I mean, just like I went through this range of emotions, and my question then was, how much did David impact the scene design concept, knowing that DOTS is an amazing team of designers? I just want to hear more about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that piece so much. I mean, I felt similarly, which is you're like, okay, like, all right. And I like, this is a nice production of Enemy of the People. And then like the aha music and the bar comes in and you're like, I'm unfamiliar with like where we're going, which to me is like the reason to go to a theater, right? Which is like when the carpet gets kind of pulled out from underneath you. Yeah, I mean, like that to me is theater. And I would say in that process, I guess I'm someone who's very good at compartmentalizing, for better or for worse. But I think in our job, it's a helpful skill to have. So I don't have a ton of trouble switching thinking. Sometimes I need a second just to like, I'm buffering, my little beach ball spins around. But I'm a controlling person who likes to have an opinion about a lot of things, but I also like to not have things be my responsibility when they don't have to be my responsibility. So there's a real pleasure to me in just like, especially when it's thoughts or it's whomever, amazing other collaborator I have, to just like let them do their thing. You know what I mean? Like I like responding to the stimulus and I really like controlling a lot of that. But I also really love it when I don't have any control over it, as per kind of earlier part of the conversation. So to me, it's just like another like, ooh, like I wouldn't have picked those. Like, that's so fun. I try to be a responsible colleague when I'm a costume designer and am dealing with the set designers. I think I am someone who's not like, this is how I would have done this differently. Like, why are you ruining it? Like, I love having that other energy in the room and not having to take the prop notes. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a kind of relief. And vice versa. Like, I love when I'm the set designer and the costume designer having like a complicated thing. It's like fun that's not my thing. So I guess I just like the kind of toggling. I like being surprised by things. So I like when I don't have to pick something and it shows up and delights me or intrigues me or confuses me or, it's like, I like getting into other people's choices. Exciting. And especially if I've had 30 whatever years of a really lucky career, and I would say in the last 15 it's been just extraordinarily lucky for so many reasons. And part of that is like I just trust the people that I'm doing shows with. So I don't, I'm delighted when Day Day comes in with these clothes, or when Montana comes in with these clothes, or when Dots comes in with this set, or Stacey DeRosier is lighting a thing, or it's Isabella Berg. It's just like they're all such great artists. It's like, this thing's great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a torture for lighting designers because there's like the kind of approach to the tech table was like, go good. David has something to say. So if there's something I feel very dogmatic about, like I think something bad is happening, I don't have that conversation with the lighting designer. I'd have that conversation with the director and let the director do with that as they want. But I'm A, that almost never happens. And B, I just like to, I have a point of view. Sometimes it's really helpful. Sometimes it's not. I know that it's sometimes not very helpful. So I try to kind of frame everything with like, it's just like, here's an offering. I know you're in the place that you're in, and this is just what I'm seeing. And sometimes that's helpful, and sometimes it's not. And it's very sweet of them to be patient with me.
That's a good way to say it. I think
the conversation between lighting designers is more challenging in a lot of ways. I mean, they kind of make the set work. And
Yeah.
so often for me, I light my models so heavily and then render them so much that it's like I'm sort of suggesting heavily, styles of which the light might help the whole world, right? And so, but then I like to release it, but then I like to kind of come back during tech and have conversations. And I've tried so many strategies where it's like, oh, let's go for a drink and, or like come to the tech table. Or even I've asked previously, can I be on the headset so I can hear the conversation about the queuing? All of them have both worked and not worked. All of the, and it's really about trust, but allowing also the trust to build so that the lighting designer trusts you enough to listen. And that's where I think working with, some of the lighting designers that you often work with, who I love, they're just between Chris Ackerlin, Mark Barton, Justin Townsend, those are amazing lighting designers that they don't care if you have a comment. They will hear it. They will listen, at the right moment.
Yeah, they're human, right? You know what I mean? Like Kevin Adams, who I work with a lot.
Yeah.
There's definitely times where I'm like, I don't, Kevin and I are really good friends, and there are times where I come to that tech table and he's like, nope, and I'm like, okay,
Yep.
like cool,
Yeah.
And I'm sure that other people feel that way.
Yeah.
And I do try to remember to be that generous with other collaborators, which it's not always the case with me at those moments where you're like, what horrible thing you have to
why
say
is
to me right
this
at this
looking like
vulnerable
this?
moment. Yeah. I try to acknowledge, and this goes back also to shops and stuff too, which is like, I understand what I'm asking. I understand that I'm asking you something that is difficult. Like, so I try to really acknowledge when something is like, I know this is going to suck, or I know you've spent 2 weeks making this thing, and can we go on a different journey or whatever? But I do try to acknowledge, I try to do at least give them the kind of decency to sort of acknowledge that it's like, I'm going to say something which is not super fun. And I appreciate it when people also say that to me, which is like, a director, sometimes there's just notes, and sometimes it's like, hey, have like a bigger note. And that's not always easy to hear, even from people that you love, do you know what I mean? And love working with. It's just like, so again, it's like part of the performance, right? You really have to sense like when somebody's open to that. And also sometimes when that they're not going to be open to that, but it is like, I need to say these things, right? You try to find the best time and the best way to say it. I tend to try to not be super dogmatic about it, which is like, here's what I'm seeing, but I just need to say the words out in the world, and then
there seems like there's less time though for the group after making, like after a day of making things, that there's less time to digest it. Like I feel like we used to go out and have a drink afterwards on more of a regular basis, and now it's sort of like everyone's running off to catch a train or to do what and probably just to get sleep. But I don't know if that's because we're getting older and we need the sleep more direly, or is it what's changed? Because that felt like an important time to me where we could unpack a little bit and loosen up and like say, because as a set designer, you're often watching in a different way than the costumes and the lighting are watching, because they're actively writing cues and, and so and they're at one spot behind a big array of equipment rather than moving around watching. And so for me, that feels like my job during tech is to watch and then to come back and say, here's what I'm seeing. I'm not sure if that's what we intended. Or maybe it is, like that was really beautiful, but I don't feel like I have as much opportunity now to say it, which is ironic since we spend so much time together.
Yeah, and the medium by which we can communicate has only sort of like tripled. Part of it, I think, like certainly since the pandemic, like nothing's open after you're done with tech.
Yes, that's true too.
Which is like a weird other thing. But I I think a lot of things have changed. I think some of it is that we're older, and so it's a little bit more like, I'm actually going to go home, or I'm going to see my husband or my wife or my cat or my babies. But you are correct. Like I'm really famous for probably 35 years of, I don't know that I'm famous for this, but since I graduated from school and started working professionally, I thought those like after tech rehearsal production meetings was like literal, like Satan's work in the world, where I was just literally like, it's 11. And at that point it was like 11:30. Where I was like, wait, we should be going home. Like these should be 2 minutes long and we should be going home. And I've been an asshole about it since. So I'm happy that people are finally like, what do we really need to talk about? But even I, who really am ready to be done at the end of the night, there is that thing after like the first run through when you've gotten to tech, where it is like, there should be a sports bar that we can all go have wings at and a beer and like de-stress, but also come back together to begin to have those conversations about what's working and what's not working. And where did we had a really good one actually from Lacage. It was a sports bar, and there were a lot of nachos and bad snack choices, which was great. But it was really important, which was like, it was a really fast tech process. And if everybody was throwing as much spaghetti at the thing as they possibly could just to kind of get through it. And it was we did a run, and it was like, that was hard. Let's go have nachos and talk about how to make it better and re-team us. You know what I mean? Like get like, here's the 6 people or whatever that are really steering how this world, and get us back on kind of the same page. Whether we've strayed from that page hugely or not, it is nice to have that like reconnection and a restating of, especially now that because the piece changes so much, right? Once you've teched it, it becomes kind of its own new thing.
Yes.
And so what is the new thing that we have, and how does it relate to the thing that we planned? And you're right, as a set designer, I do think you often have a kind of unique, you're talking to the director, you're roaming around, and you just kind of structurally have a little bit of a like outside view. Your notes become less frantic.
And it's a release of our control at that point,
Yeah.
So that's sort of like me telling myself right now, not only am I like trying to create inroads with this lighting designer who now has control over what everything looks like, it's me like personally just releasing. So I have to remind myself that. And I watch my students have a very hard time at those moments too. And I try to model how you sort of tiptoe over and make sure you're right there available for the conversation. But, we have our own personal things going on with something we've just put out there. And so we're looking at what we've created, warts and all.
Yeah.
Sitting in front of us.
It's a little existential, where you're like, you're suddenly distanced from this thing that you probably generated, the world of it, from the germ of it.
Yeah. And I love the distancing. Like that's a real high for me, which is like it, like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly is like, great. Like a butterfly seems like it's going to be fine.
Yep.
Bye. So much of what we do is such a kind of Zen exercise of like hyper attachment, but also willingness to just let it all go. And that's a hard thing to always be in a good mood about. It's actually not a hard thing to navigate, but it's a hard thing to just always be sunny about. So navigating, it's easy to deal with when you're in a sunny mood, but how does everybody navigate when it's just hard, when it's so vulnerable?
One of the interests we have is hearing from you about essentially that, and navigating, right? But I'm sure there are pivotal moments that you've hit that either maybe later recognized, oh, that was a moment which changed me and my career and my choices. But navigating the balance of types of projects, so the range of your work is extensive, but from small to large theaters, from abstract to realistic environments. I mean, I think the zenness of the flow, it probably kind of, that is the answer, but I'd love to hear you talk about, as you started, how that's now changed and how you've hopefully taking control of that flow in a way that's beneficial.
I don't know that I have a lot of control over that flow. Like I don't, I mean, the range of projects, I kind of, I mean, there are things I don't take or interview for or can't take because of schedule or whatever, but I'm not like that picky, you know, like the work comes, and if I'm available and interested, I take the work.
It was actually Marcia Ginsburg who was curious about this in your career.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yes. So that sort of set us really thinking about that, because sometimes I feel like, I know that I'm labeled in a certain way and I'm going to work in these sort of spaces, but you're able to work in so many spaces, and I think it's curious.
Yeah, I mean, Marcia and I have been friends for 30-something years, and I mean, just with all respect to both you and to everybody, I just don't think there's a better subject.
I know,
I mean,
right?
And I'd have thought that forever, and I'm so in awe of how her brain works. So I would say it's so interesting that is on her mind, because to me, I feel like my flexibility or my whatever about like, it's like SpongeBob and like the stereophonic, those things are in my brain. Like those worlds, I'm as passionate about a kind of, realistically detailed, X, Y, or Z environment. And the architecture of it, and the like, what is it about that makes that air feel like those spaces, as I am about like dumb, faggoty, bright colored, SpongeBob too. Like I can take multitudes. When I came to NYU, and Marcia was also there, and as you can imagine, that was like a huge source of tension with the department, because I was like an old-fashioned person who was like, your style changes for like the kind of play it is, and that's not really a thing I understand particularly anymore. Like I don't think texts require a particular style. Like I actually just don't really know what that means. But the changing accessing different parts of your whatever to suit the kind of needs of a show has always been something it felt like I'm sorry I'm taking a long time to answer this question, but it's like a real puzzle for me. And it was really born, I mean, it feels like a weakness to me, or it used to feel like a weakness to me, which was like, I'm not, especially in comparison to Marcia, who's so smart and whose art background is so smart. And I was like never an artist. I was just like a dumb theater kid who was like, who was kind of interested in like not just dumb theater stuff. Like, so it was a real complex that I carried around for a real time, because I was like, well, I'll never be as smart as Marcia. I'm just like a dumb guy who's like, I'm in a musical, like it's like this, like entering this, it's like this. And in fact, I actually, between Marcia and Andrew Lieberman, like I had these friends who were like such good set designers, and I was like, I just shouldn't be designing scenery, because it's just, I'm never going to be as smart as these people. And I believe in the last part of that statement. But obviously I've made some peace with design scenery. I'm just interested in a lot of things. And
right.
I feel, I don't think I can do everything. I've actually turned down a big and probably profitable project fairly recently, where I was just like, you want the solutions for this, because it was also like very written into the script in a way that was like smart. Like they clearly like figured it out. But I was like, it was very like partial bathroom, partial thing, like partial, like we're in this space, but we're not in this space. Like it was like musical scenery. And I was like, I don't do that. Like I don't, and really what I mean by when I say that is I don't like it, but I admire it. I admire people that are really good at it. I really have deep admiration for people who can like move stuff around. But like when half a bedroom comes on, I'm like, I don't understand why there's half a bedroom. Like I just don't understand.
I love that.
I literally feel like I get hives when I feel like a set piece has to move. You know what I mean? Because I like already hear the casters, and so I'm like already sweating in meetings when I'm like, no.
Oh my God. So good.
The only thing that needs to change is the lighting and the way you use the thing, and then it will become the other thing. So I don't need to move anything. So please don't ask me.
I love moving things.
Yeah, I hate it.
I'm just like dumb about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and partly it's money. I don't do the projects where it's like it can come spinning up out of the floor. And truly, it's like zero shade to people that do that or are really good at it. I just don't understand it. And I don't know where to start. It's like, well, what part of the bedroom do you take away?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand. So when I try to do those things, they look like an imposter doing them. So I know there are things that I am passionate about and that I'm good at. And if I feel like a project that's been given to me is asking me to wrestle with those things or some other thing that I'm interested in wrestling with, I'll step up to the plate and do it. But if it's clearly out of my purview, I can't. But I live in such admiration for the rigor that Marcia brings to her work. I'm just like fundamentally incapable of caring about things in the way that Marcia cares about things. Which isn't to say that I don't have a deep well of caring, but my ability, and it really makes me question this about myself, particularly because Marcia is so deeply, there is a right answer to what the molding is and what the furniture is. And it's so beautiful. And the work shows it. And I'm just not that person. And so I try to have the rigor that is important to me to bring to a piece. I was thinking about it earlier, actually. I remember there was an interview in the 90s with Isaac Mizrahi because his studio was on Worcester Street, and someone asked him who his favorite designer was. And this was like at the peak of his documentary and stuff. And I like Isaac Mizrahi, a ton. And he was like, it's Ray Kawakubo's my favorite. And he was like, she doesn't have anything to do with my work. Like, I honestly am not trying to make work like her. But I loved he was like the mystery of the world that she inhabits is so beautiful, and I feel that about Marcia's work. I feel that about Jim Clayburgh's work, just like trying to understand what is the mind, like, how do you come to these choices, I can't speak to whether my work gender-sided other people, but that's who I look to and feel inspired by, which are people that kind of put the kind of mystery is baked into the work so beautifully there's a kind of perfectness about it that I feel like I'll never achieve, but I love sort of observing.
But you're voicing some really important things, at least, for things that I try to portray to my students, which is, a deficit that we think is a deficit. We can find a way to find in ourselves our thing that makes this us. And I'm always trying to affirm this. And I will let you know that, I'm often showing students other set designers. And when they see your work, they are triggered. They feel like the world of theater opens. So if there is a through line, I could put up any image of your work and they feel like they can access it, but not in a not artistic way. It's like all of a sudden the theater feels open to them. So I don't know what that through line is, but it's something that within your sets, you've layered a place where they feel they relate. And I see it when I go through the imagery of your work also. So, just to speak back, because I also could stare at Marcia's work and my students, can also. It's so gorgeous, but we all have that. But I do love when I play this game with my students to see what they see. And yours is always a place they enter.
It's very moving to hear. I feel so divorced from it in a good way. Like, I'm uninterested in controlling how people feel about things, and it's also my goal is to make that border. It's just very emotional for me, but to make that border very open.
Yeah,
is something that's I don't even know that I would, can be such an asshole that I don't know that I would vocalize it particularly, but although I just did, but it's very moving to hear that.
it's interesting that you really can't know yourself as a designer until you have a body of work.
Yeah.
And even then to look at it and think, well, am I this kind of designer? Am I this kind of designer? I mean, we're chameleons. And yet, you can look at each of us and see a through line, And it's so important that we have deficit, what could be seen as a deficit to ourselves, which is probably not in those words to anybody else, but because it makes all of the work unique. When I'm looking at my book up here of my Anna Zebrock collection of books, and it's like, I feel like I'm at a loss when I look at that type of work, and it's so beautiful and so poignant, and yet like I don't want to be that. But I always feel when I look at designers who inspire me, I feel inept, right? And I feel like, okay, I wish I could do that. Well, no, it's probably really good that I can't do that, because then I would not be me. We live in this world of like, we're only as good as the last thing that we did, the last show that we did, or we're only seen in that way, I think, often. But I personally feel that, success is like looking back and actually being able to say, okay, I sustained myself by doing this job, because this is it's a hard career to have. So success to me is like, I'm doing it, right? And so then to look at it and go, is it good? I don't know if I want to make that call, right? But if it moves people, that's where it's like, that's the measure of it. When I looked at Liberation, the images were so beautiful. And I think it was just the color choices of those mats, like I find looking at your work just sublime. Like you find in each image, you find that thing that is like, I know exactly what this show is about and I don't know it. Right. And it's an image I care suddenly about. Like I want to see that, So that's been a real joy to see the images that you post, even though I haven't seen the work. We make these images that are moving because it's designed for live performance. So you can really never know a piece unless you've seen it. But the images that come out are really stunning.
Yeah, we're making theater and, it's not that accessible and like definitely not to my student population. That's another reason that your work is important, is that I can just show an image of it and they get the story. So I think that it's important. Like I'm always trying to source images because I can't get them in the spaces. I've only gotten to see 2 of your shows, right? It's a different kind of theater these days.
Do you know the thing that I did as a kid, you'd listen to a cast album or you'd see a photo and whatever and kind of make up the show from that. And I think there's a real, like, isn't that kind of what we do? Is like, you have some clues and then you dream the rest of this thing. And so I'm not trying to so I'm glad the theater's not accessible to your students. Of course, I wish it was, but I do think like that exercise is actually on some level important, which is like, because what's beautiful is you can't really, like you do kind of know what Liberation is about looking at it, but also you can't really know what it's about until you sit through the thing, right? So I think of like the ERS GATS, their adaptation of The Great Gatsby, which is like you see picture, like when I first saw those photos, I was like, oh, I literally don't care what the event is. Like I would just want to be in that room. And so you piece together, because one knows their work and one knows them and, whatever, you sort of piece together what you think the event is going to be, but you don't ever know, which is what's so thrilling. I'm seeing the Worcester Group tonight. They're doing the NIAT School Redux. And I feel like that's a kind of similar thing, which is like, I know I've seen Kate, I've seen the table, I've seen I know the work, I've known the work for a long time. But I don't know what it's going to be until the lights go down and then this kind of dream starts. We do such a weird
a thing. I want to just, because we're going to wind it up, but one of the things that was just this layer of weirdness of something I held on to in my research is that you sort of mentioned Annie as your start,
Oh, yeah.
When I was young, the first thing I wanted to do was direct and act in Annie. And I just had a front yard. And I was like, everybody, I am going to design Annie outside on a hill. so when you speak about
amazing.
Yes, on that little mound where Mrs. Hannigan is drunk.
Right.
But yeah,
Perfect. Right.
I mean, you can run with anything in theater. So I really appreciate that you say that about theater. It's like, it just takes the littlest thing to ignite our imagination to move it into another place.
Yeah, just a little spark. It's just a little spark. And it is, and what I love about that actually is that I feel like that it goes to the, everybody likes to have rules about everything, but you're like, in no version of Annie is it like, on the grassy mound outside, but you're like, I got it. Like, I have somebody who wants to be the drunk lady, and I want to be Pepper, so I need nothing else. And you don't need anything else, right? You can make a beautiful thing with the things around you, and that can be 12th Night, that can be Annie, that can be, whatever.
And the program. I still have the program. So I made the program with my... So that's all you need. It's a piece of paper that says it.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that is actually, right, of course, the program is like, it is this kind of beautiful, it's like the other text that you need to just bounce the grassy mound and Miss Hannigan off of. And like whoever played Sandy. No, it's beautiful. Like I remember when we had the meeting to move Funhouse from the public, and we took a meeting up at Circle in the Square. And Ben Stanton, who led it, and myself and Sam Gold were all in Circle in the Square. And I thought we were just kind of like looking at it, It was clear that they wanted us to like say whether we thought that was a good idea or not. And Circle in the Square is obviously a theater of the round. We had done it only in a very proscenium theater. So we were like, can we just have like a few minutes to sort of touch base? So they went to like one side of Circle, and Ben and Sam and I went to the other side, and with the kind of spirit of you putting on Annie, was like, we didn't know how to do it. It was literally like, this feels like not a great idea. Like the space feels cool, and I don't know how to do it, but like the space feels cool. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And we figured it out. And that spirit of like being emboldened by the things that seem wrong about a potential thing, which I have to remind myself sometimes, like sometimes that's really the solution, which is like, this is a hard, go back to it. This is a hard smash. And rather than that feeling like an obstacle to making it, that's the reason why we're going to make it. And why it's going to be interesting, because there's tension, and the tension is great.
And we'll carry the football.
Yeah,
I think yeah, exactly.
I think it goes back to the football, but it's because you trust theater so implicitly that you're that flexible because of your trust with it.
And I trust my collaborators.
Yeah, and you trust your collaborators. Yeah.
And that's what's hard about being a student. So I would say to
totally
any young person that's watching, like that is what's hard about being a student, which is you're finding those people, and you're learning an important thing, which is how to make something with people you don't trust, because you will be doing that too, and you can do that. But really what you're looking for are your friends that you do just think like, we got this? Yeah, cool. We could do this. That's a real freedom.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lovely way to end the conversation. I feel like you must want to get out of that bathroom.
Like weirdly, I'm actually very happy to, but sadly I will go to tech shortly yet.
It's so lovely to talk with you finally.
Totally. Thank you so much. Nice to see everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.